everybody, Brian Hogman here with my good friend, good buddy Tobias Smulders with the Pig Podcast. Tobias, how are you, man?
Good. How you doing?
I missed you. We haven't done this in far too long, my friend, so it's good to see you again.
Yes, so happy to be back.
Yeah, man. So it's been one hell of a year. We're here in 2021 right now, and what are you seeing out there in the market right now when it comes down to rental properties?
Rental properties, still lots of stuff up for rent. Lots of tenants moving all around. I think some tenants are upgrading too.
Rents have gone up quite a bit too, haven't they? We were just talking about that. Like I see the rental, like not only have house prices gone up a ton, but rent is, would you say it's increasing at the same pace, like as the property values?
I think it's not just because the values have gone so high, like they've blown up. Like our stat, widely advertised stat is 30% increase.
Yeah, rents definitely have not gone up 30%. That's true, right?
But that's a huge chunk of increase. However, it may be a lot closer pace to a mortgage payment with everything that's gone on in the mortgage world the last year. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good way to put it, because even though the rents haven't kept pace with the price increases, you couple the incremental rent increases with the decline in mortgage rates, you've got some good cash flow, right? Because we just recently saw a little bit of a rate hike by almost half a point over the past couple of weeks, but you're still sitting at almost 2% rates on variables. You're under 2, like your historically low interest rates. So that can still generate cash flow positive situations, even with high prices right now. So I think it's actually still a good thing. So
yes.
We were going to talk about today some of our fun-filled stories with tenants and evictions right now, because right now it's harder. Have you had much experience with it? Because I know with me, I had 2 evictions going on, and the landlord-tenant boards backed up quite a bit, from my understanding. You had any lately, or?
So we have been very lucky and blessed to have no evictions from tenants. Like we do have a few situations that are late and back payment people, but we're working with those guys to try and make it work for everybody. So sort of like a payment plan to ensure that they don't get too far behind, and we don't want to displace anybody unnecessarily, just because we're trying to be sensitive to the situation. Everybody's get through this together. So we do have some tenants.
You are the world's nicest landlord, Tobias. You really are. I'm renting from you. You know what? I wouldn't want to rent from me. I'm going to rent from you. You are.
But everyone else has been really, really good. So of like 17 tenants, we have like 1 tenant who's a little bit behind, and he's a self-employed fella. So we know that he's doing what he can, and he's not paying like this whole time. He's been making payments and just getting by. So we're amendable to that. And we always like tenants who take good care of the property, and so we know he's tried, tested, and true good tenant that's treating the home well. And it's the scenario. We could have probably pushed for an eviction, but it'd be 6 months, I think, is roughly what they're backed up.
They're back up to, I think I just heard recently, we have a paralegal that does ours, right? Mm-hmm. And they're hearing ones from November right now. So that's November, December, January, February, March. So 4 to 5 months. So so that's 4 to 5 month backlog. So you're probably not too far off, like getting off of 4 to 6 months. And I think, you always remind me, it really comes down to, and I think anybody getting into real estate and investment, it all starts with the quality of tenant. You get a good tenant, you don't have problems, right? Like typically, because you do a great job at screening, you have a great system for making sure good tenants come into your units.
Yes.
And that can avoid a lot of big property management issues, eviction issues, all that, if you just hold out, right? And make sure you're not just, because I remember me, like when I first got started, I'm like, oh my gosh, do you have a pulse and you have some money? Let's go. Get in there and start paying me, right?
Wait, you have last month's rent you can give me right now, and you're going to move in 1 week? Amazing. I'm not even going to be vacant.
Oh my God, this is the lottery, right? So, and again, that's why you guys are here, to learn what not to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You can learn from our mistakes. I've done that far too many times.
Yeah. So, but no, with the evictions right now, because we had two, and we had one that started in March of 2020. If anybody remembers what happened in March 2020, and we just got them out in I want to say September, October. So it was a long haul, right? And now we have another one that started in September, and we're still in the process of it. So that's going October, November, December, January, February. So it's going on 6 months right now. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important too. What we learned along the way is the importance of letting the professionals do the professional work, right? Like, and the importance of a paralegal. I think, and we've touched on this before, but do you have a paralegal that you've ever used or hired before in these types of situations?
Again, we're lucky in that we haven't had to hire a paralegal, but we do have a couple paralegals that clients use, and one from our lawyer that was recommended. So our lawyer for all our real estate transactions has a paralegal they work with. So we have people available should we need them, and because we know that that's a slippery slope, you got to make sure everything is by the book and done right, and a paralegal is going to ensure that everything is done the right way.
Well, and I think it's important too, because one thing that I know, learning from my mistakes, the difference between a property manager and a paralegal, right? Because I know sometimes, we've had great property management in the past, but sometimes it's even better to have more specialized services, because the property manager can serve your N4 notice, can serve your L1, they can take care of the property, right? But are they really good in the courtroom, like in that you can't handle the truth kind of situation, right? Like a trial. So that is a skill set that, we had to learn the hard way, because we had a great property manager, but unfortunately their true skill set wasn't in landlord tenant board. And it actually cost us probably an extra 2-3 months of process. Whereas if we just would have hired the paralegal right away, they would have had more specialty and actually probably had the eviction done sooner, which in my mind justifies the cost tenfold.
Yeah.
Would you agree with
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that just being done on time, because once you get into a situation where, the tenant isn't, because they can always pay and stay, right? But if it gets to a situation where they're not going to be able to redeem themselves, and they know that they're leaving, and you might be able to speak to this and what happened to you, chances are they probably stop paying as soon as they know that they're not coming. Oh, yeah. They're not staying. So if you got 6 months process and it's not done right, and they don't pay for 6 months, and it could have been 3 months, that's a big difference on your back end too.
Yeah, and I think you have a pretty good understanding in knowing who's going to be the tenant that's going to pay and stay, and who's not, and who's going to sort of take advantage of the system, right? And in our experience, anybody who's made an effort to pay will do a great job, right? But I'm a big believer now, and it's kind of like I've learned the hard way, is like really systematizing your rental property as a business. Tobias is maybe a little bit nicer than I am. I may be I might be Uncle Scrooge, right? But I do think that, our mindset is the property management, if you're late one day, you get your N4, which is your paperwork, right? And again, it doesn't mean anything if you pay up to date. If you really are going to pay me on Friday, like you say you are, then the N4 doesn't mean anything, right? Yes. There's no cost, there's no nothing, right? But then at least you're starting your paperwork. And then our new process now is, as soon as an L1 is filed, that's the one, it's 10 or 14 days after the N4.
Yep.
As soon as that's filed, we take our package and hand it over to the paralegal instantly and say, here you go. It's just an automatic system now to say, here you go, because when you're delayed by months in landlord tenant board during these times right now, you can't, like, our delay was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars now, because rents are, on that unit, I believe it was around $1,400 a month. So
yeah, and that's the thing. It's really important to be set that tone too, especially on a new tenancy. You get your new tenant, and they get paperwork they've never seen before, because they always had we'll say passive landlord or a novice landlord that doesn't have a system in place, where on the second of the month when they haven't paid, they receive an N4. A lot of tenants don't even know that that's a piece of paper they get when they don't pay their rent, because I'll pay Friday or whatever, and they make good on it, so they don't even know. But they see this, and that form is very cut and dry. It says this is going to lead to you being evicted. Like,
it's very clear, and I think you can give that to someone with love too. You can give that to someone and say, listen, like, I'm not the bank. You've got to do this, because you don't want to put, especially for any first-time investors or people like that, you don't want to put your own financial well-being in jeopardy by carrying debt for somebody else, right? Like, just because it may not end well, right? So, and I just want to say too, because I'm not trying to sing the woes here, because I know a lot of times we hear bad news on rental properties, but the reality is, like, that property we had just, I think I told you this, we had bought it 5 years ago, and it almost tripled in value in 5 years. So on the other side of it, we ended up having some issues with with cash flow for a few months, but I wouldn't trade that for the world. You know what I mean? Because it still is a tried, tested, and true investment. And it's just like anytime you have a long-term vision, long-term goal with that rental property, there's going to be some bumps in the road, right? Going to be some bumps. So
totally. And I think that speaks to also just like knowing the situation. If you're, like you said, these tenants aren't going to pay. You want to be on top of that and make sure that you do everything properly. And it's proper. Like, if you live in rental property, it's proper and normal that you pay your rent on time. Like, and so the next step, if that doesn't happen, it's proper and normal that if you don't pay, the process starts where you don't live there anymore. No one should be living for free anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what? It's going back to the paralegal situation. It was interesting because the one situation we have right now, had we not referred it, we may have been in more trouble, because what happened in our unique situation is someone abandoned the unit. So our tenant didn't pay for 3 or 4 months. I feel like I'm on a soap opera here and somebody's going to start yelling Jerry, right? But they didn't pay for like 3 or 4 months. And then when our property manager went by to check our smoke alarms, there was someone else living in the unit. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, this has got to be illegal. This is trespassing or whatever. And the paralegal said, okay, you have to fill out, I believe it was called an A1. He goes, and it's a completely different reason. He said, if you continue down the same path of non-payment, you could run into issues. Now you need to file new paperwork. And had we not gone to a paralegal and got that advice, I could be sitting with this professional tenant crying about this a year from now. Do you know what I mean? So again, like, having that professional advice is very, very key to uncover situations that even like a seasoned investor like me or you, like, I would have had no idea. I would have had no clue about that.
And that's another thing too, the paperwork, as much as it's cut and dry, like you don't pay, you get kicked out. If it's not filled out correctly and accurately, and you end up, in the, it's not a courtroom, but there's an adjudicator there that they look at your filing and they say, it's been done wrong, dismissed. There's no like, oh, you did this or you did that, or your date's out. It's very cut and dry. And the adjudicator will just dismiss your case, and you start from the beginning after you waited 6 months for your date.
And that is time as a property investor you do not have in today's world right now. You get one kick at the can, you got one chance, you got to do it right, and hire the professionals to do it. And that would include a paralegal, a phenomenal real estate agent, and a really good mortgage broker too.
Pretty decent mortgage broker.
Pretty decent mortgage broker as well too, I would say. Pretty decent.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
all right, dude. All right. How about what's that?
I was gonna say, what else we got to touch on for tenant stuff right now? Yeah. We've got now that is very backed up for non-payment, but it's important to note that, like, if there's serious issues, that stuff they're taking right away too, right?
Yeah.
Like damage to units, safety concerns, that sort of stuff. That stuff's not that's not on the back burner. We'll say.
You know what I will say though, it's like, because I've just have the best tenants lately. Okay? Like, because we did have a situation where and it's very, very important to, like, because we did have a, I don't want to say drug dealer in one of our units, but someone who was accused, let's say. I want to be
allegedly
allegedly doing something nefarious in their unit, right? Which involved, you know, police coming, breaking down the door, someone jumping out of a second-story window, like something out of Cops. Okay, like literally, I was waiting to see
Jerry.
Right? And it was when that actually got taken to the tribunal, they threw it out because they said there's no proof.
Oh my God.
There's no proof. Police went to your property, but there's no proof of drug trafficking going on there. So we can't say that they're trafficking drugs. So it is actually quite difficult. You need to make sure that you're getting, if you do have this situation, which I'm sure you won't, this has only happened to me once in 15 years. Okay. With, you know, we have almost 35 units now, but make sure you get but the police reports. You can ask a police officer for a police report or an incident number. Make sure you get all that paperwork, because that is required if you're bringing that type of case to the tribunal. So very, very important to get any incident report from a police officer, anything like that, to help validate your case. Because in ours, it was like, it wasn't fun.
That's worth the price of admission right there. Make sure you get the incident number and the report to include on your file, because you have to prove everything again, cut and dry. Got to have the documents, and I think that's the lesson for today is make sure everything's done properly.
Yes. Well, you know what?
Professional will do that for you. Yeah.
There's one more too I'll ask you on, because we just when you sell a house and you've got to give a tenant notice. Have you? So I learned on one situation where, because selling the house, the way that it's written, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tobias, but you have to give, because if I'm selling my rental property and someone's going to move into it and occupy it as a principal residence, you're allowed to serve notice. Mm-hmm. Right. But you have to give them 60 days from the first of the month.
Yes.
And right. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's totally correct. And we have this situation right now where you give that notice and the person's going to move in. And I just had somebody contact me because we have a rental listed for sale for a client, and there's tenants in there, and their buyer has been homeless for the past 5 months because they bought a property that was a rental property, and the seller gave the tenant notice. Wow. And the tenant didn't leave. And then they couldn't close because I think on the mortgage side of things, if there's a tenant in there and they qualify for a personal residence mortgage, not a rental property mortgage, they can't get funding. And that tenant would not leave. And the owner had not filed, and I think they didn't want to go through the process of really dragging it out. So the buyer opted out of their contract and is now still looking for a house. So they came somebody out for sale. I think with those questions, I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. Just like situation popping up because it's so delayed.
And I think that's important, just to piggyback off what you said, is do your paperwork, because you might become friends with your tenants. You might have a great relationship, right? But if it's not on paper, you could be foregoing a sale. You could be in breach of contract. So, you know, that handshake, I hate to say it because I love handshakes and hugs. You know, I wish I could do business like that all the time, but you really need to have it documented and on paper, right? Like you 100% need to, no matter how close you are with somebody, it does need to be on there. So it'll go through.
Yes. Cool. Okay.
Great.
Well,
that was a good one. Welcome back, Pig Podcast. All right.
There we go. Make today a fabulous day.